We want to focus now on the Secret Service response to this assassination attempt. We have our contributor, Donald Mihalek, a former senior official with the Secret Service. Mr. Mihalek, thank you for joining us this morning. Boy, it's really hard to believe that something like this could happen. How do you explain it?
That's a great question, and that's the question I think everybody's going to want answered eventually, which is going to come in the form of an investigation. We're potentially looking at 3 investigations here. You're looking at the FBI investigation for an attempted assassination against former President Trump, looking at a Secret Service mission assurance investigation to look at the protective methodologies that were in place at the event, any lapse, gaps, or problems that occurred. And you're also looking at the officer use of force incident here, the counter sniper shooting of the suspect. All of that is going to be looked at, investigated, and then they're going to determine what the answers are. And for the Secret Service, it's going to be looking at, were there any potential gaps? What are the gaps? One thing people have to remember is that the Secret Service is not in the business of risk elimination. You can't eliminate all risks. What they do is risk mitigation. And that risk mitigation process comes in the form of the advance process, where the advance team goes out to a site, they look over the site, they put in protective methodologies to minimize risks. That risk mitigation is not only Secret Service personnel, but is also counterparts from local and state agencies that are also helping that to form the perimeters, the rings of protection around an event site. I'm sure the investigation will highlight that, and the Secret Service does one thing very well: it adjusts and it adapts to problems.
And you spoke of the Secret Service agents. They managed to shoot the suspect, but why didn't they see him on the roof before he was able to get any shots off?
So, Mike, if you watch the video, there's a video of the counter snipers on the rooftop. If you watch that video, they appear to range in and identify the threat as soon as it showed up on the roof. Now, the Secret Service counter snipers and Secret Service personnel are bound by typical U.S. use of force rules. They can't just shoot somebody because they see somebody. They have to make sure that and identify it's a threat and make sure that the threat is actionable. In this situation, you're talking about a threat even 100, 120 yards out. That is not an easy thing to see from a rooftop perspective. And when you do see that, then you have to make sure that it is indeed a threat and that it wasn't a mechanic or somebody else going on the top of the roof to do something, or worse, a potential other law enforcement officer. So if you watch the video, it looks like they identify the threat. They probably call in a ground team to go assess, is that a friend or a foe? And then almost simultaneously, you see the rifle discharge the round at the target. So it appears to me that they did see the threat. They did take action as soon as they could identify that it was a threat and ultimately stop the threat.
We so appreciate your insight. It's very, very, very helpful. And you talked about the investigations. We know the FBI, of course, is going to be investigating into the background of the shooter. And you talk about the Secret Service also under an investigation. So who would be leading that investigation against the Secret Service?
Well, the Secret Service is going to do its own investigation, probably with the Department of Homeland Security Office of the Inspector General, and probably with the FBI in tow as well, to look at the protective methodologies in place to assess what the advance did, what they were looking at, what assets were in place, if more assets were potentially needed, if there were gaps, if there were personnel failures. They'll look at all of that. And if we look at past incidents that the Secret Service was involved in, they've done that in almost every single incident where there was a potential protective failure. And what they've done moving forward is they've made sure they've put into place things that would mitigate those potential gaps. Look, the presidential campaign is very frenetic. It's a tasking of resources on the Secret Service. Potentially, they've got to protect these going to 4 or 5 states with multiple stops in each state. They're deploying personnel all over the place, cars, vehicles, armor. There's only a finite amount of resources the Secret Service has, and in many ways, they depend on their state and local counterparts to help fill those gaps, which they did here in Butler with the Pennsylvania State Police and the local officers. All of that is going to be looked at. All of that will be reviewed. My guess is it'll be reviewed quickly because we still have a campaign ahead that has to be protected, safe, and the American people have to feel that it's safe.
And talk to me about the agents' response as they rushed the stage and formed a human shield around the former president.
So when you go through Secret Service training, one of the things you always practice over and over again is an attack on a protectee. This was almost textbook attack on a protectee, where you have an incident happening against a protectee. The agents responded almost immediately, formed a human shield, a body bunker, putting their lives, their bodies in between the threat and the protectee, and then evacuating the protectee, to a secure location, in this case, the motorcade, and then, of course, taking the motorcade to the hospital so the protectee could be assessed. The video itself is almost a training exercise for the Secret Service. It was almost textbook.
All right, Donald, thank you again for your insight and perspective. Really to appreciate your time. And we're going to keep following the very latest on the investigation into the assassination attempt on Donald Trump.